Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for joining us today for our Hatsubon Service. This is a memorial service that honors all our temple members and friends who've received a Higashi Honganji funeral in the past year. And actually, because of the current temple closure, this, of course, is our virtual Hatsubon service. And unfortunately, we are not able to have our Hatsubon families join us in person. But nonetheless, we hope that you are able to join us virtually today, and that, in some way, this service can still provide support to you and your family. And of course, whether or not you are a Hatsubon family member, we're very glad that you've joined us today to listen to the Buddha's teachings together. So we will begin our service with the Gatha Shinshu Shuka, one verse. Amida-kyo. Please be seated if you're standing. And now we will have the chanting of the Amida-kyo. Now we will have the Hatsubon name, reading of the Hatsubon names and candle offering. The first name is Mrs. Cheng Ye Lee. Mrs. Kyoko K. Ni. Mr. Sam Susumu Moriyama. Mrs. Rieko Ueda. Mrs. Sally Ryo Kuriyama. Mr. Ryo Kasai. Mr. Shoichi Kadonaga. Mrs. Chiyoko Namekata. Mr. Thomas Masada. Mr. Wei Han Lee. Mr. Yukio Mitsuuchi. Mrs. Mineko Hirasaki Sakai. Mrs. Sumiko Sakamoto. Mr. Shosaku Oseki. Mr. Isamu Sam Kawahira. Mr. Mitsuru Koyama. Mr. Roy Atsumi Ota. Mrs. Margaret Margot Suzuki. Mrs. Mitsuko Yamamoto. Mr. Isamu Sam Kakiba. Mrs. Miyako Mae Suzuki. Mrs. Mary Miyako Imoto. Mr. Lawson Ichiro Sakai. Mrs. Masako Ni. And Mrs. Mitsuyo Michi Kakiba. Thank you very much. Namo Amida-kyo, Namo Amida-kyo, Namo Amida-kyo. And now I would like to ask Rinban Ito to come up and give us a greeting.
Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our Hatsubon service for this year. Today's Hatsubon service is a historical service. When we think back, Higashi Honganji was established back in 1904. And so this year would be the 116th year of our existence, and perhaps the 115th annual Obon service. We are still living through COVID-19, and it looks like it will go on for a lot longer. And then also we've had the civil rights movement, Black Lives Today events to remember and honor the civil rights leader, Mr. John Lewis, who just passed away. Normally, we would have the families of those who've lost loved ones during the past year from last year's Obon join us for this service here, and we would have family members come up and offer the candles to their loved ones. And this year, because of the fact that we can't have everyone with us, I was honored to be able to present the candles to each of the people, the 25 members and friends who have passed away since last year's Obon. Obon is, as you know, the time for us to honor and to remember, especially those who passed away during the past year, but also all of our parents, our grandparents, our uncles and aunts, all of our ancestors, all of our friends who've passed away before us. And it's hard to remember them on an everyday basis, and so this service is the reminder that we should remember them, to remember their wishes and to continue to receive their wishes on how we should try to the best of our abilities to live up to their expectations and to fulfill the wishes they have for us. I hope that you'll enjoy the rest of the summer, stay safe and healthy, and again, thank you for joining us this morning for the service. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank all of the people who were involved in putting together the wonderful program that we had, the first virtual Obon festival ever. That was streamed yesterday, and I think that if you missed it, you can access the video today or any other, whenever you have a chance. Again, thank you for joining us, and we hope that you enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rinban Ito, for your greeting. And so now I will give the English Dharma message. So, let's see. I think we're okay. Well, good morning once again, and of course, welcome to our Hatsubon service. I think, as Ito-sensei mentioned, so in case you don't know, Hatsu means first, and so Hatsubon is the first bon, or first obon service for families who've lost a loved one in the previous 12 months. And at the Hatsubon service, we remember our loved ones and express our gratitude for everything that we've received from them. And then, like all Buddhist memorial services, this is a time to, of course, reflect on the teaching of the Buddha. At the core of the teachings of the Buddha is, of course, the truth of impermanence. And for those who've lost a family member in the past year, this is a very difficult truth to accept, because impermanence means that everything, whether it's the cells in our body or the galaxies in the universe, everything is constantly changing and constantly flowing. And of course, this truth is also reflected in the loss of our loved ones. However, I think that although our loved ones are no longer physically with us, that there's also something about our relationship with them which doesn't really end. And I think there are many ways to understand the nature of this sort of continuing relationship. I think in our Pure Land tradition, we say that if we keep our loved one's memory alive in our hearts and minds, then our relationship will continue. And very importantly, if we also keep in mind the Buddhist teachings, then this relationship can actually deepen going forward. I think this deepening relationship is the natural result of our encounters with the teachings, with the reality of impermanence. And this is in fact, this deepening appreciation for our loved ones who've passed on that comes when we reflect on their passing and the teachings of the Buddha. But in addition, in today's Hatsubon service, I can't help but think of another kind of relationship. And this is the relationship that we all share to get together as members of the temple. In Buddhism, as you probably know, this collective relationship is established within the Sangha, within the community of fellow followers of the Buddha. And because the Hatsubon service is a Buddhist memorial service, it shares the same kind of emphasis on impermanence as our other memorial services, such as the monthly Shotsuki memorial service that many of you are familiar with. But there's also something unique about the Hatsubon service. Of course, I think as Rinban Ito referred to, this year, of course, our Hatsubon service is very different because of the coronavirus pandemic and the temple being closed, and so we've had to make some modifications to our service. You know, normally, I think, as those of you that have seen this before, you know that what makes the Hatsubon service unique is that as each name is called, one by one, the next of kin and the other family members come forward to offer incense and place a candle in front of their loved one's homyo card. This homyo card shows the Buddhist name, or homyo, that was conferred at the funeral. Let me show you a short video that Rinban Ito made. So, in this year's modified service, you saw Rinban Ito serve as the representative of each family and coming up and placing the card and offering the candle. But in any case, the homyo itself, I think, is very significant. In a traditional Shin Buddhist funeral, the officiating priest has many responsibilities, such as consoling the family, helping to arrange the service order, and leading the funeral ritual itself. But their most important responsibility is to transmit the Buddhist teachings. And I think in this sense, it's in this homyo that the Buddhist significance of both the deceased's life and their death can be most memorably distilled. Normally, we leave the Hatsubon cards here on the altar until the end of Obon at around 8 or 9 o'clock Sunday evening. And in past years, I've sometimes seen people come up here while they're while the candles are lit or even after the candles go out, studying the cards. The reason I observe this is because one of my responsibilities is actually to keep the charcoal lit all day long. So I come in here periodically, and I have noticed people coming up very close to the cards and examining them. And I think that even if they didn't know the deceased, in reading the kanji, they can get a deep sense of who the person was through their homyo. I will continue to let the video play here. I think as you can see, each homyo card, the largest kanji characters are the homyo itself, and it always starts with shaku for men or shakuni, which for women, and that means that this person is a follower of the Buddha's teachings. Or in a sense, we could say this person is a representative of the Buddha's teaching, and that their passing has taught us something about the Buddha's teaching of impermanence. And one other thing is that as I think many of you know, when a funeral is requested, one of the first things that the officiating priest needs to have is a fairly detailed family history, or a personal history of the deceased. Even if, if Rinban Ito or myself or some other minister here knows the family or knows the deceased, we don't know all the details of their life, such as when they were born and their education and the struggles that they encountered growing up and so forth. And so it's very helpful to receive that personal history, and it's upon studying of that personal history and reflecting on the person that we knew that the homyo is finally decided upon by the officiating priest. So it's very significant. But in addition, I think there's a special significance to this particular side-by-side arrangement of the homyo cards. This is a visual display that, as far as I know, is unique to the Hatsubon service. So we know that all Buddhist memorial services share a common emphasis on the teaching of impermanence and on acknowledging our loss. But in a temple-wide memorial service honoring all these people together, I think there's also a sense that the Sangha, all of us collectively, also lost something. Often the people being remembered, and I think you heard some names today that you probably recognize, or maybe you knew them very well, that these people being remembered were, in a very real sense, also known and loved by all of us here at the temple. And even some of these people, even if we didn't know them that well, regardless, because of the basic interconnection that we have with each other, there's a strong sense of our shared loss in the Hatsubon service. As I mentioned, normally each family comes up one at a time to offer incense and place a candle in front of their loved one's homyo card. And I think that as each name is called and as each Hatsubon family comes up one by one in the incense and candle offering, each of us is encouraged to reflect on what we are collectively witnessing. And I think most likely we will also recall our own experiences of loss. And in that case, I think it can be said that we are, in a very real sense, sharing in their loss. And as you know, one of the oldest teachings of the Buddha is the emphasis on what are called the three treasures. The three treasures are the Buddha, the teacher, the Dharma or teaching, and the Sangha or the community of fellow listeners. And all three of these are truly treasures. But I think that there's also a sense in which the Sangha has its own special significance. And this is because when we encounter the reality of impermanence through the passing of the people we hold dear, in memorial services and in our regular interactions at the temple, we will receive without fail the warm fellowship and compassionate support of our fellow Sangha members. I say that we receive this support without fail because this is the way that the Buddhist teachings work in our lives. We cannot help but give support to others when we ourselves have encountered the same truth of impermanence through the loss of our own loved ones. In observing the incense and candle offering and sharing in each other's loss, I think we can acknowledge this universality of the reality of impermanence. And in so doing, isn't there also a sense of all of us being brought together in this shared experience? This shared experience is central to understanding the special significance of the Sangha in Buddhism. I think in a sense that it's in the Sangha that we, maybe only in the Sangha, that we are more deeply able to understand the way that Buddhism works. It's in our shared experiences as members of the Sangha that we come to understand the Buddha's teaching itself. I think we can see this working in today's service. So on the one hand, the passing of our loved ones is of course difficult not only for the family members, but given the interconnection of the Sangha, it's also difficult for the entire Sangha. We will always miss our friends here. Because all of our lives are interdependent, we naturally are all touched by each other's lives. And I think it could be said that we therefore tend to experience collectively the difficult aspects of the impermanence of life. And because of our having collectively encountered this truth, in the Sangha we also can experience the compassionate support of our fellow members. Life is precious, life is wonderful, but the Buddha taught that we are only able to fully appreciate this gift because life is impermanent. And when we are aware of the impermanence of life, it's this awareness that enables us to more deeply appreciate not only how fortunate we are to be members of the Sangha, but ultimately, like the Buddha, we can appreciate all life and enjoy each moment of our lives. In closing, I'd just like to say on behalf of the Higashi Honganji Los Angeles Betsuin, I'd like to offer my sincere condolences to all of our Hatsubon families. And also on this occasion, let us all express together as family and friends of those who've passed on our deepest appreciation for how they've enriched our lives. And as members of the Sangha here, let us express our gratitude for this opportunity to come together today in oneness. Namo Amida-kyo, Namo Amida-kyo, Namo Amida-kyo. And now I'd like to ask Reverend Fujii to give a Japanese Dharma talk.
皆さんおはようございます。本日はロサンゼルス別院、初盆法要にご参加くださいましてありがとうございます。お盆といえば日本では里帰り、お墓参り、お盆祭り、そういった時期にあたるかと思います。また世間一般では、このお盆の時期に亡くなった方が、戻ってこられ、そして、またお盆が終わりますと亡くなった方がお浄土に帰っていく、そういったことが言われているかと思います。ですから、きゅうりで作った馬であったりとかナスで作った牛、そして、迎え火、送り火、そういったことを、されるかと思います。浄土真宗では、阿弥陀様の、働きが2つございまして、2種のエコーと言われるものです。その1つというのは、我々衆生が、阿弥陀様のお力によって浄土に行く、往生するっていう一つの力、そして、もう一個の働きとしては、その浄土に、行きまして、仏様になられた方が、また、この迷いの世界である、世間に、戻ってきまして、我々衆生を救うという、そういった、働きがあるというふうに言われています。ですから、その働きというのはいつも働いてますので、お盆の時期だけに、亡くなった方が戻ってくるというのではなくて、いつも、我々の、亡くなった愛しい方というのは、私たちのそばにいて、見守ってくださる、そういうことが、言えるのかなというふうに思います。この度は初盆法要ということで、昨年のお盆から数えまして1年間の間で、亡くなられた方がいらっしゃると思います。そういう方々というのは、思いがけず、亡くなってしまったということだと思います。そしてその 1年間の間亡くなられた方が、我々に教えてくださったということは、私たちの命がいついかなる時に、亡くなってしまうかもわからない、そういったことを、その方々は教えてくださっているのかと思います。しかし、そういう亡くなった方のお葬式であったりとか法事をした際に、そういうことっていうのは我々は感じるものですけども、日々の忙しい時間というのを過ごしている上で、この一日一日のありがたさというものをどうしても忘れてしまうのではないかと思います。ですからこういうお盆法要、初盆法要という亡き人を偲ぶ、亡き人に思いを馳せるという機会というのは、そういった命の大切さを教えてくださる、そういう亡き人とまた再び会える大切な機会なのかと思います。誕生日というものがありますね。誕生日、生まれた日を祝う日ですね。その日には、例えば私ですと、約2年前に息子が生まれまして、去年1歳の誕生日ありましたけども、その時に本当に、生まれてくれてありがとうというふうに、生まれたことに対する感謝の気持ちを込めて、誕生会というのをしました。しかし、私にとって息子が生まれたというのは本当に嬉しいことですし、ありがたいことですから、日々本当は毎日生まれてくれてありがとうっていうふうに感謝の気持ちを息子に伝えるなり、何かしら行動で示さなければいけないのかなというふうに思うんですけども、忙しかったりとか、子供がいたずらとかそういうことをしてたら、もう生まれてきてありがとうなんてことはいつでも言えるわけではないんですね。だからこそ誕生日の機会っていうのは、しっかりと生まれた時のことを思い出して感謝の気持ちを述べることができる、そういった機会でありまして、非常に大切なことかと思います。ですから、その誕生日の機会とお盆の機会というのは、少し似てるというか一緒なのではないかなというふうに思っております。昨年のことをこの時期のことを思い出しますと、昨年は今年と違って、普通に皆さん土曜日曜と集まって、別院の駐車場でお盆の催し物があったりと、普通にお盆のことを、お盆の行事をしたかと思います。しかし、その時は私はまた来年も、ちょうど今ですね、同じようにこのお盆というのを過ごせるんだろうなというふうに考えてたんですけども、こういうことになりまして、実際に皆さんとお会いして、お盆の行事を楽しむっていうことはできなかったわけです。そして私事ですけども、もうこのロサンゼルスに滞在するのもあと1年もないということで、こうやって、本当は皆さんと一緒に過ごせたはずのお盆が過ごせないということで、振り返ってみると去年のお盆が私が皆さんと一緒に何かすることができた最後のお盆だったということで、また来年もできるだろうなというふうに思ってなったのがもうできないということで、去年のお盆はすごく私にとって貴重な、実際に皆さんと会って過ごすことができるお盆だったんだろうなというふうに思い返しております。その去年のお盆だけじゃなくて、考えてみると今日という一日自体がもう二度と訪れることはない、そういった機会ですから、本当はその一日一日を大切に過ごさなければいけないことだと思いますし、そういうふうに過ごしていくということが、我々が願われていることかと思います。私たちがこういうふうに、当たり前のように過ごしている日々、去年のお盆ですら、私はまた来年過ごせるだろうなって思ってますし、今日っていう日も明日っていう日も同じように来るんではないかなと考えてしまいがちですけども、実は1時間先30分先もどうなるかわからないというのがこの世の真実なのかと思います。 せっかくこういうふうにお盆の法要、お盆という初盆の法要ということで、亡き人をご縁としてこういう仏法を聞かせていただく機会を与えてくださいました。そういう大切な機会をいただきながら、そしてまたいつも見守ってくださる亡き人、そういった方に感謝をする日が今日なのではないかなというふうに思います。そして私たちが亡き人から願われているということは、今日一日一日っていうのを大切に丁寧に過ごしていく、そういったことだと思いますので、その教えに対してご恩に報いるためにも一生懸命過ごしていかなければならないのかなというふうに思います。本日はこれで法話を終わりたいと思います。ありがとうございました。
Thank you very much, Reverend Fujii, for your talk. I now would like to ask you to join us in singing the Gatha Ontoku San 1. If you have your red book, it's on page 112. Well, before we close, maybe some brief announcements. The only announcement that I have is that really there's not much to announce right now because we're, kind of waiting to see what happens with the status of the pandemic. And of course, we have to take into consideration all of our safety before we actually open the temple. So we will keep abreast of the latest developments. And we are considering all of our options right now, so please stay tuned either through our email chain or through our Facebook page, or we also have the videos on the YouTube channel. So thank you very much for your patience and your understanding. One announcement that I can make is that next week we'll have our August Shosuke service, and Rinban Ito will officiate it. And so we'll see you virtually next week for sure. Rinban, did you have any other announcements? No? Okay. This concludes our 2020 Hatsubon service. And once again, thank you very much for joining us. And of course, please stay safe, keep yourself and your family safe, and that way we can certainly enjoy each other's company, hopefully in the not too distant future. So thank you very much again for joining us. Thank you.